How to sell a boring car, add a pinch of Emoción, and transform a Volkswagen Tiguan into a Cupra Terramar. They look different, but these crossovers have similar dimensions and share powertrains. Other differences? What does the Terramar have in common with the Porsche? And why doesn't it have a 1,000 kilometers plus range like the Chinese PHEVs? Watch this to find out. Terramar replaces the Ateca, which was more like a Skoda Karoq than the VW Tiguan. Today one could say Cupra aspires to Audi or maybe to Porsche, even if it's a fake Porsche.
Tiguan, Q3, Terramar. They are all about 4.5 meters long, about 186 centimeters wide, and more or less 160 centimeters high, and they all have a wheelbase of 268 centimeters or so. Under the bonnet is the same engine lineup, 1.5-liter petrol mild hybrid or PHEV, as well as 2-liter petrol and diesel engines with front or all-wheel drive. Okay, Cupra doesn't have a diesel, but it has a striking design. We'll leave practicality for later. Something tells me you're more interested in what does this Cupra have in common with a Porsche. Hop in!
If you expected the 265 horsepower Veloz, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but this is a 204 horsepower PHEV and it's front-wheel drive.
Cupra claims that Terramar will do 0 to 100 km per hour in 8.3 seconds. Somehow, the heavier Tiguan with the same powertrain is supposed to be a tenth of a second quicker, at least on paper. In real life, the Terramar PHEV achieves 100 km per hour in 8.1 seconds in sport mode and 8.3 seconds in comfort mode. Respectable, because many car makers are gatekeeping full performance behind launch control and additional sport modes.
Unfortunately, the Terramar also has terrible brakes, and it's not a matter of this particular car doing 20,000 kilometers on the press fleet. There are no squeaks or rough friction which I would attribute to used up pads or discs. Rather, it seems like a case of poor region brake calibration. You press the brake lightly and nothing happens. You press it harder and still nothing. It's like pressing a rubber ball. There is resistance, but nothing happens. You have to press the brake really hard for the car to start decelerating. This road I'm filming on, I've been driving here for almost 30 years now, which tells you how old I am, by the way. And I'm filming cars here since about 15 years. So there's this perpendicular road which I use to turn around, and I start braking from more or less the same speed and the same distance in all cars. And guess what? The Terramar is the only car in 15 years that I almost missed the turn in. And not just me, by the way. I also tried emergency braking. The brakes are just crap. I'm sure it's something you can get used to and learn to compensate for, but if brakes on the Tiguan and the Q3 PHEVs are the same, then VW has a problem.
Region braking can be set to automatic, low or high. Low region braking is almost nothing, high is high enough. Automatic detects cars ahead as well as turns, crossings or speed limits, and the car decelerates accordingly.
A few years ago, when VW announced the new generation of their PHEV system, emphasis was on the electric range exceeding 100 kilometers. And in case of this Cupra Terramar, we're talking between 110 and 123 WLTP electric range with a traction battery of about 26 kilowatt hours gross or around 20 kilowatt hours net.
New VW Group PHEVs can charge not only at 11 kilowatts AC, but also up to 50 kilowatts DC. This means 0 to full in about 2.5 hours using that round-ish plug, or from 10 to 80% in 26 minutes using that weird plug. Charging port is on the front driver's side fender.
claimed fuel economy is around half a liter per 100 kilometers combined. That's assuming you recharge the car as soon as the battery drains. I suppose every now and then the engine comes on to circulate fluids or when you accelerate harder. If you're gentle with the throttle, the Terramar can accelerate up to 140 kilometers per hour in electric mode, but in the long run that's pointless because the car just uses too much energy and you won't get anywhere close to the claimed 110 or 123 kilometers in electric mode.
But if you drive carefully in and around the city, the electric range actually stays within the manufacturer's claims. When the traction battery runs out, the engine switches to regular hybrid mode. Bear in mind there is a buffer of almost 6 kWh, so there's enough electrons to turn the wheels for a short distance when the car is traveling at constant speed or crawling in traffic.
In this situation, fuel consumption will hover around 6-7 liters per 100 kilometers, which with a 45-liter fuel tank gives us a range of 700 to 800 kilometers plus the 120 kilometers of electric-only range, perhaps up to 900 kilometers. Chinese plug-ins aren't more efficient. They simply have larger fuel tanks. For example, the MG HS fits 10 liters more in its fuel tank, so the total range over 1,000 kilometers is a result of longer operation using the internal combustion engine, not, say, 200 kilometers electric range.
However, while I didn't expect much in terms of handling and powertrain calibration from MG, I did have high hopes for the Cupra and I am disappointed. Not only the brakes suck balls, but so does the handover between combustion and electric propulsion during spirited driving.
For example, mid-corner the computer can shut off the combustion engine and switch to electric mode, which, if you're driving fast enough, affects the car's balance. Add to that, for example, a slippery road, and we have a problem. Or you need to accelerate. Suddenly you hit the gas, the car starts accelerating on electric power, and only after a moment does the combustion engine kick in, the transmission searches for the right gear and the car lurches forward. And no plug-in hybrid should behave like this, and certainly not a second or third generation PHEV. After all, Volkswagen has been making plug-in hybrids for at least 12 years.
And of course, ADAS nannies are overzealous like in the Tiguan. Every time you start the car, it's best to turn off emergency braking during reversing and also the front collision mitigation system just to be on the safe side. Ironic, I know.
But there is hope, because something in this Cupra is Porsche-like, and it's a good sign for other powertrain variants. My first impression when I sat behind the wheel was the stiffness, and not that kind of stiffness. A firm steering wheel like in a Porsche. Add to that the relatively stiff suspension and precise steering, it's like a light version of the old Macan. The 265 horsepower Terramar must be fantastic to drive. This, not so much.
I drove the Q3 with this powertrain and it was great. You can find a link to my review in the video description. Unfortunately, soundproofing in the Terramar leaves a lot to be desired. Perhaps if you go for a version with a more fruity exhaust note, it's okay, but in this variant there's just a lot of wind noise and the 1.5-liter engine which struggles to figure out what to do.
The Terramar's cockpit still resembles that of cars with analog instruments, even though there is a driver's display. Now, this thing is covered like the old dials, and the display modes resemble traditional dials, and that's a plus. Physical buttons on the steering wheel and on the console are also a plus. The infotainment system is a dashboard-mounted screen similar to the one we've seen in Volkswagen and Skoda models, but at least the software has been improved over the last 5 years. The operation is relatively logical, and most shortcuts, including disable ESA, are accessible from a pull-down menu. Off.
Something I haven't been able to disable, and I'm afraid it's not a bug, it's a feature, is the constant shutdown. Let's say you pull up to your house and need to open the gate, or you park briefly at a store, leave the passenger inside, and then head out to quickly grab something. After 30 seconds, the car shuts off. It doesn't matter if you left the key inside or even your seatbelt fastened, because that's how I sometimes trick electric cars from German manufacturers. The car shuts off and the passenger cooks inside. I understand you shouldn't leave a car with a combustion engine running, but a charged PHEV isn't emitting. Let the air conditioning run. You can imagine the fun I had when stopping every several hundred meters to move the GoPros around the car, 8 times in 15 minutes to be exact.
The materials inside are hard in some places and noisy, and the paddles behind the steering wheel feel particularly cheap.
There is a wireless charger on the console, which at best maintains the phone's charge, but it often drops the connection. The cup holders restrict access to the phone tray anyway. The storage compartment under the armrest is small, but at least the armrest height is adjustable. The glove box is adequate, the door pockets are spacious, and the doors cover the sills.
There is a lot of legroom unless you slide the seat forward 15 centimeters, which I cannot do here because my part doesn't work for some reason. There is also plenty of headroom unless you adjust the backrest angle to a more upright position. Then you don't have much space overhead. There is third zone climate control, 2 USB-C ports, a large tunnel running through the middle. The door pockets are spacious, and there are also cup holders in the armrest. Not only are there cup holders in the armrest, but behind the armrest is a pass through to the boot. The seat splits 40-20-40. There are ISOFIX anchor points on the side seats in the back and on the front passenger seat, which you can probably see down here. And why this thing doesn't move, no idea. Maybe it's a hybrid thing, or maybe it's just broken.
The boot volume is up to 490 liters with the rear seats moved forward, and up to 400 liters with the rear seats in the standard position. I assume these calculations also take into account this particularly awkward underfloor space around the protruding fuel tank. Don't get me started on the audio system components here. If this is the best a leading global car maker comes up with, the Chinese don't even have to try very hard. Price of the Cupra Terramar start at €45,280 for the front-wheel drive 1.5-liter MHEV. This test car is a PHEV. With options, it costs €60,700.
If you have 60 grand to spend on a Cupra, get the 265 horsepower all-wheel drive Veloz and leave the PHEV for someone who doesn't care much for Emoción. And how do you like the Cupra Terramar? And do you know where the name's derived from? Let me know in the comment section below.
If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.